Hey, I don't know what happened, but my Rodecaster, this microphone, plugged out while I was recording. Like it just stopped recording. So if you're watching this on YouTube, it means that like there's 40 minutes of this podcast is now audio only. Fuck. So yeah. If you want to hear this podcast, go to the Apple podcast app or Spotify and just listen to this latest episode. Yay. Okay. So yeah, if you're watching this episode on YouTube, you're missing shit tons of context. Basic context is that we're talking about status. Making sure that you understand that when people are buying things, they're thinking about how it changes their status. And maybe this is a good time for the people who don't want to listen to the audio version to just jump straight into the video that triggered it. So I'm just going to jump into this video from Russell Brunson and make sure that first audio testing. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. Oh man, I showed so much fun stuff. I'm annoyed. Well, it's my own fault. I mean, that's what I get for having a podcast, which I just do myself and I just do it live. Shit goes wrong. Who cares? So let's watch this video from Russell Brunson.
This is the only reason why people either buy or they don't buy from you. One of my friends, Perry Belcher, told me this story. He told me that the only reason that people will move towards you or away
Perry Belcher.
from you is because
I don't want to spend too much time with that person belching all day.
Of a fear of an increase.
All right, let's start that again. Sorry, I got distracted by the name Perry Belcher. I assume many of you know that the word belch is the same word for burp, so it's, Jonathan Belcher. Blech.
This is the only reason why people either buy or they don't buy from you. One of my friends, Perry Belcher, told me this story. He told me that the only reason that people will move towards you or away from you is because of a fear of an increase or a decrease in status. Status is the key. And when someone's given a new opportunity, they look at that. The first thing going through their subconscious mind is like, if I do this thing, will it increase my status or will it decrease my status? So when somebody buys a product, just by default, them pulling money out of their wallet to buy it is decreasing their status. With the hope that if they buy this thing, maybe it helps them lose weight or make money or whatever your product is, the overall benefit will actually increase their status. Now, status is different for everybody, right? Some people's status is having a really nice car. Other people, having a really nice car would actually be a decrease in status because their friends and their family members might make fun of them. So status is always different. You have to understand that this subconscious juggling thing is happening inside of everyone's minds every single time you make an offer to them. So your job when you're creating an offer is to make something so irresistible that the only logical outcome is that it's going to increase their status.
Okay, so status, understanding that when somebody is buying something from you, and again, like, okay, if you're offering tax services or health insurance, or there's probably some spaces where this doesn't work or it doesn't matter. But even when someone's buying design work from AJ and Smart for us to do, or let's say somebody's buying like large scale corporate training from us, this person who's buying it from us, who's on the call with us, if we do a bad job, their status will decrease. So we have to assure them that we will do a good job and make them look good at their company. And I think understanding this and understanding that this is like just a fundamental innate human need to not have super low status and get like ejected from the tribe or whatever, can really, really help when you're thinking about how to frame things, how to sell things. Another way of looking at this, by the way, what I did yesterday was, after thinking more about this, I went to ChatGPT and I had ChatGPT go through some of our recent marketing emails. And I said, I want you to rewrite these, but focus on increasing status. And an example of this that I found really interesting is that we talk about on our landing page for, I'll show you now that I can show you stuff again, since we're now on YouTube. So these bits you'll be able to see on YouTube. If you go to our in-person training, No, I'll just go here for you. So it went through here, and it was like, okay, you've got this private community access. Instead of just saying you get access to a community, the truth is this is like the most exclusive networking community for facilitators in the world. There is nothing like it, where people are also paying so much and investing so much to join. This is where the best facilitators in the world spend their time. And this is something we're not even thinking about. We don't even talk about, but that is a status boosting piece of copy to clarify, hey, you're going to be with other people who are doing amazing things around. You're going to be able to network. You're going to be in the same space as these people. And so thinking about this status element when selling, when marketing, is so goddamn important, instead of just saying, here are the features, here's what they'll do for you. You know, even if you have that lens of, well, what's in this for me? The secondary lens is, and how does this affect my status? Russell Brunson mentioned there, that's who we were listening to, by the way. Russell Brunson was the person talking. He mentioned, like, for some people, having a nice car can lower their status. Yeah. If I drove around in a Ferrari, it would lower my status because it just wouldn't, it's not the game I'm playing. I don't want to look like a kind of rich, whatever that is. I don't know what that is if you're driving around in a very loud, crazy Ferrari. A lot of people where I live in Berlin drive around in extremely loud, fast, flashy cars. I think it's kind of not cool. Like, I don't like it. That would, my friends would think I'm very uncool if I drove around in a flashy car. It would lower my status for sure. So thinking about the types of people who might be buying from you, and thinking about number one, does your product increase their status? And if not, how can you help them? How can you build it so that it increases their status? How can you help them gain more status in their workplace? And again, status in this case can just be, how can you make them super useful to their staff and to their employees and to their team, so that they're seen as a person at the company who's super valuable and super useful. And I think usefulness is one of those things that increases status. It is this sense that people need you, or people get a lot of value out of you just being in the room. You can always tell when you're in a group of people that people are like gravitating to one or two people in the group, and that's also a signal of status. Like, why is it that people want to talk to those people? Well, maybe they're the most interesting, which is also a status signifier. How can you help people become more interesting? It's not all about money. I heard a great. I was watching a video. I can't remember who it was, but I was looking into this. I don't know if you guys know this FIRE thing. It's like retire early. I can't remember what. Financial independence, retire early. It's a Reddit. And the idea is that you kind of engineer your finances so that you can retire early. I'm not doing that. I never really thought about this topic. But one of the video I watched about this, and it was something I'd been thinking about, is if you retire when you're 40, and a lot of people mentally retire already when they're like 35. I know a lot of people who are super checked out of everything already at my age. If you retire early, meaning you don't work anymore, you've got so much money, you've got your finances set up in a way that from the age of 40 on, if you live within your means, you don't have to work anymore. Your status essentially, what people don't think about, and I was researching it, your status actually goes down and you become less interesting. So, sorry, I burped there in case anyone heard that. I wanted to make it a loud one, but I thought it wouldn't be appropriate for you guys. So yeah, if you're fully retired, let's say right now I sell AJ and Smart and I get a couple of million euro for it, and I just do nothing. I don't do anything anymore. All I do is occasional philanthropy stuff. The stuff that people do when they retire is like, especially when super rich people do it, it's like kind of drifting around. I'll go to my meditation retreats and, all the usual stuff. When I'm sitting at a table, 5 years later, I'm going to be so like checked out of the things that are happening in the world, and so checked out of, I won't be a useful member of society. I'll be sort of like just hanging around, and that is going to reduce my status. For me, status, I look at status as being interested. So I'm interested in a lot of things. I'm a teacher because I can, the things that I'm doing in my day-to-day life, I can bring that to the world. And so my status is driven very much by being very interested in things, very focused on like building and bringing value, and then being able to talk about that in a way that other people can do that themselves or find it interesting, whatever it is. But a couple of years ago, the name of this podcast is The Unscheduled CEO. I kind of stepped back from AJ and Smart. I stepped back from the day-to-day of running this business, and I became more out of touch. And it just feels kind of, it doesn't matter if you're still getting paid. You just feel kind of useless. And no one wants to feel useless. And I think an easy way to think about status is, in a real way that isn't just about having a fancy car, is, do other people find you super useful and interesting? Like, would other people find it very useful to have you around? And, when you're in a company, if you're working at a company, the people with the highest status are not just the people who've accidentally fallen their way up the corporate ladder. They have like fake status, right? People talk behind their back if they're an idiot and whatever, but the people who have real status are the people who are like extremely useful, and everyone wants to work with them. Everyone's like begging for their time. It's like, how do I get more of this person's time? Being useful feels good. I think, you hear this a lot, that a lot of guys, a lot of men are kind of going through this like crisis of feeling kind of useless, like that there's, you can just stay at home, like especially if you're working from home, you can just stay at home all day and just stay on your computer all day. You don't have to necessarily be useful to get all the way to like 80 years old. You can just stay home and kind of do nothing. And it starts to make people feel kind of like fatigued and depressed. And I think so this idea of chasing status, it's not just about, hey, how do I get a fancy watch? How do I get a fancy car? It's not just about that. It's also about that you have skills and talents and a personality and special things about you that make you valuable to other people. And this is when I'm talking about status, and when I'm talking about marketing and using status increase in your marketing, I'm not talking about, although it can be an element of it, I'm not talking about the idea of having lots of money or having fancy things. It's about how these people who are buying your things, like in your space, what would status mean? And I just gave you some examples. When people are working with AJ and Smart as an agency, status is I brought in this agency and they did a great job, and now people trust that I am like someone who has good taste. When it's somebody learning facilitation from us, it's I've learned this thing, which now allows me to be super useful to many more people than I was before. And so people want to spend more time with me. I think that's just very innate. It's very human. That's the status thing, right? I want to do like a whole episode on this, or a whole separate episode on the usefulness thing, because, sorry, I'm just leaning back right now. I think like I'm probably a little bit out of focus on the YouTube channel. I don't care. I think this is just like one of the most important things for happiness. It's if I if I could point out one of the most obvious things that makes unhappy people pretty unhappy, it's feeling useless, feeling like not valuable, feeling that people never see their true value. Is a very common thing that I see in the world. You probably know a lot of people. Maybe some of you are one of those people who says, I'm like, nobody can actually see how talented I am. Nobody actually knows how valuable I am. People just don't understand. You might be one of those people, or you might be someone who just feels kind of useless. It's like, I don't have any skills that anyone else actually wants. And often people go down this route, and I posted this on Twitter yesterday. People go down this route of like, what's my purpose? What's my vision? What am I here to do? And my friend Eric, we were talking about this, and he said there's this term called dharma, and I'm probably getting this horribly wrong. Let's see if I can find it. So dharma, Dharma. What is it from? Hinduism, and it means duty. D-U-T-Y, not D-O-O-T-Y. It means duty. And I think we were talking about this, and I was thinking like people get so stuck thinking like, what's my purpose? What's my vision? What's my mission? Like, I can't figure out what I want to do. Like, no, I don't want to be a computer programmer. Like, that's not my mission. That's not what I've been put on this earth to do. But I think instead of trying to figure out all the time, like, what is the meaning of all of this? What's my mission? What's my vision? By the way, I know I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole on this topic of status. Instead of thinking about these things so deeply and so metaphysically and going and doing your ayahuasca retreat to figure it out, I'm not saying this wouldn't be interesting to do. I'm just saying you don't need to do these more wild interventions to just figure out the answer. Is when you are more valuable to the people around you, when you are able to bring value to the people around you and figure out like what's the thing that you do that other people find useful, you just start to feel better. You just start to feeling useful and figuring out what your duty is and just doing that. It actually feels good. It doesn't need to be deep and meaningful. Like for me at AJ and Smart, I told you I stepped out for a while and I started to feel quite bored and quite like, I was like, what am I doing with my life? And I had all these mentors and I was trying to figure it out and I was like doing all this stuff and I was like, where am I going? And in the end, what I'm good at, or where I'm helpful to my community and to my group is communication. So a lot of people don't want to be doing, for example, this podcast, but okay, this podcast is more like a hobby, but me doing the ads for AJ and Smart, or me doing videos for AJ and Smart, or I'm good at like taking complex concepts and making them simple. So for example, this meetings book, I showed it earlier, but I think I didn't record it. This is like our new book at AJ and Smart. And just being the person who can just boil all of everything we're doing down to one word, being able to simplify things, being able to maybe entertain people. Like there are a lot of little things that I can do that essentially are just like where I'm useful. And when I do these things and when people find these things useful, then I feel valuable and then I feel good. It's as basic as that, to be honest. Like, it doesn't have to be deeper. It really doesn't have to be deeper. And I think a lot of people make a lot of money trying to help people figure out their mission and their vision and their purpose. Whereas I think what we should all be doing is just helping people figure out like, hey, what are you going to be kind of good at? Like, not even what's your zone of genius. It's like, what are you pretty good at? And then like, how can you do that in a place where it's going to be helpful for people? It really doesn't need to be deeper than that. So yeah, that's what's been on my mind, is this idea of status in marketing, reminding myself, reminding Laura, reminding the team that we shouldn't forget that when people buy our stuff, especially when they're spending this much money, they are thinking about like, how do I become more valuable? Not because I want to help my company, not because like I want to help this massive corporate make more money. It's like, how do I become more valuable to those around me? Because that feels really nice to be valuable to those around me. Nothing feels worse than being fucking useless and people don't call upon you. I think it's an innate human thing where if you're not bringing any value, people can sense it and people kind of just leave you out of things. And a couple of steps back, then you can take, there's two options you have in that situation where you feel a bit like useless, that you'll either think everyone else doesn't understand how valuable you are. And this path is, I don't think, very valuable, because if no one else can see how valuable you are, obviously the truth is probably no one's thinking this is super valuable. That's probably the truth. But no one wants to say it. Like, it's, if you're working at a large company and people keep like leaving you out of stuff or not wanting to work with you, probably it's just that they don't want to, and it's not that they don't see your value. And so then it's just about the actionable thing you can do is figure out, how can I actually be more valuable and where am I not being valuable? So the route one is just complaining about it and pushing against it and just deciding that no one can see how valuable you are. And so just loudly explain why you are valuable. This is the route which will hold you back forever. By the way, red flag alert. Like, if you're hiring, this is a hiring thing. If you're hiring and the person you're hiring keeps talking about how their previous employers didn't value what they did and didn't give them credit for what they did, and like they are way more valuable than anybody on the previous team understood, they will be doing that at your company within weeks. They'll be saying the exact same thing. There's a 100% chance that the same person who says that their previous employers didn't value them, they just will not be able. They'll bring this forward to instead of joining your company and figuring out like, oh yeah, here's how I can be valuable in this environment. They'll just be like, people don't understand how valuable I am, and I'm being left out of things, and it's a real thing to watch out for if you're hiring someone. In general, you can basically say how people speak about their previous employer. If it's just one previous employer, it could be like a special case. But if they tell you that their previous job no one valued them, then the previous job before that no one valued them, and then you are just the next one who's not going to value them. Just so you know. So yeah, path one, if you're not feeling valued, is be irritated by it and tell everyone else that they should value you. This would be like me going to my friends and being like, guys, you have to value me. I'm very funny. Like, I have all this business advice. So like, why are you not valuing me? You should be valuing me. You really should. Well, what are they going to do? Of course, they're going to be like, yeah, you're right. We should. You are very funny. La, 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 la. Or you just start to figure out what things can I bring to this group that actually brings everyone value. That's the thing you should be probably doing. That's the thing that will actually make your life better. It's a situation where you actually put effort in versus just complaining. I've gone off on a deep rabbit hole here. It's actually such a big topic. You meet people, you will have met people in your life who are permanently stuck in this loop of talking about how other people didn't see how valuable they were, and how other people don't see how, they were the ones who, I don't know, you get what I mean, right? It's a whole narrative. And we all have a little bit of this, right? I remember back in the day at AJ and Smart, one of my early lessons of running a business is I was like, oh my God, I'm putting so much effort into this business. I'm giving so many perks. I'm paying people so well and nobody ever thanks me. Ooh. Instead, I just get people complaining to me all the time. And hey, guess what? I'm the CEO. That's what's going to happen. That's what I realized later is like my expectation of having other people be nice to me because I'm doing nice things for them isn't how life works. It isn't just how the world works. And the only thing that I should be focusing on is bringing as much value to the team. And I'm not talking about value as in, here's the perks I'm giving you. I want to bring value in the literal ways that I can bring value to the business and move us all along and jump in to pieces of projects where people maybe don't enjoy doing video or maybe don't want to do the copywriting. So literally, me at AJ and Smart, my value is never going to be creating nice perks and coming up with nice company retreats. People don't give a shit about that kind of stuff long run. They care about the day-to-day value that you bring them. And the only value I can bring as the CEO of AJ and Smart to the employees is making an environment where there's a feeling of growth, and ideally there's financial growth in the business as well, so we can increase salaries, but also just a sense that we're doing something that kind of matters and gives them a sense of duty. Everything else is kind of like doesn't matter. Yeah. I just want to make sure I wish Laura was on this podcast because these conversations, they go on for like honestly 8 hours and she has so many, she's like, oh, what about this? And I'm like, oh fuck yeah, that's such a good thing. But Laura has just so much to do every day at AJ and Smart. We keep trying to do episodes together, but it just never works out. Yeah. Status is not about, and I know I've talked about this before on Greg's podcast this week. I talked about like this idea of like understanding where you are in relation to other people. And someone wrote a comment saying like, oh, there's such, you guys focus so much on hierarchies. And I think I was going to reply and say, well, you can either accept that this is what reality is like, or just pretend and be annoyed that it's not like this. I prefer to live in like reality. Unless I really want to push back and like break the whole system, right? Am I realistically going to be an activist who fights against capitalism and fights against human status, which has been there since I'm very sure the first humans existed? No, I don't have the ability to do this or interest. I'm just living in a world where I'm trying to observe, how does this work? How do power dynamics work? How does status work? Where am I in that story? How do you not get caught up in the superficial status games? Again, I think superficial status games is like job titles that don't matter, fancy watches, stupid cars, massive houses. Like, unless you just really love those things, I think those things are like not that interesting status games. But regardless, right, these games are being played, and it's different depending on where you live and who you spend time with. The status games in Miami are pretty different to the status games in Berlin. The status games in Berlin are quite different to the status games in New York. Status games in LA are very different to the status games in Tokyo. So yeah. And the status games in corporates are very different to the status games at startups. But it always exists. And you're always thinking about it, whether you like it or not. Unless you're like a completely unplugged, like monk mode, don't care about anything, have already opted out of capitalism. By the way, the only people I ever know who do this are like the insanely richest people of all time. What I notice is like people get like ludicrously rich, then they like opt out of everything, become full on monk, and then like 2 years later, they're like, fuck this, I'm back. I'm sure the exact same thing would happen to me. A lot of like, I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying this is stupid. I'm just saying that's an observation I have. And then these people tell everyone else that they should be like monk mode and like, well, they should just like check out of everything and not work so hard. And it's all about balance, even though these people used zero balance to get to where they were. I don't think I'm going to do the mailbox today, but thank you for all your questions. If you do have questions, you can ask questions at the howtobusiness.substack.com blog. You'll see the latest episode. I know if you're watching this on YouTube, over half of it is just audio only. So definitely check out go to your podcast app, search the Unscheduled CEO, and just, subscribe to it. I hope this episode was somewhat valuable. I know it was more open than the previous ones, but I don't want to have to I want to come to this podcast with a general thought that's on my mind and just roll with it. That's the whole point of it. It's not supposed to be focused. So, hey, if you're in the comments saying I had to listen to this on 2x to get through it, please unsubscribe. You're out. You're out. You're not part of the Unscheduled CEO group anymore. Status down. No, I deeply understand if you have to listen to it on 2x. Actually, I have a tip. If there's a podcast app. If you have an iPhone and you use the Overcast app, you can do this thing called Smart Speed or something, and it removes all the silences. It's actually really good. You should check that out. It's good. Thank you so much, everyone. I don't know how many more weeks I'll actually stick to the Tuesday schedule, but people listening and people commenting helps, because then I'm like, there's actually humans who are interested in this. Definitely subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That's it. Oh, by the way, for anyone who got this far, very few of you, the LA Mastermind thing, I still haven't. The first 10 people who signed up, I've emailed you, and I know most of you have already bought tickets to it. But I'm running a mastermind in LA in August, a business mastermind. I'll talk about it again another time. I'm so far behind on that topic in terms of, I was going to announce it on our public channels, so people could buy tickets. Too much to do at the moment, but I'm still very much looking forward to it. Oh, wait, I'm playing 2 songs. Bye, everybody. Hey, YouTube. See you later.